So if you're selling on Shopify, you might be crushing it when it comes to DTC. And now you're thinking about expanding to Amazon as well. And it's definitely the right thing to consider. But there's a lot of pros and cons to think about before you actually make that move to selling your Shopify products on Amazon as well. And we're going to run through some of the pros and cons, and that way you can consider it all before you make this move. Here are the pros and cons to think about when expanding your Shopify store to Amazon. The first one is that there's more exposure. And obviously, this is the biggest pull to Amazon and why you're probably thinking about it in the first place, because with 197 million customers all over the world, you want access to those customers. Huge pro. The next pro is super easy fulfillment. Now, Amazon has FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon, and this is something that takes a huge headache of owning an e-commerce, shipping, fulfillment, pick and pack, warehousing, all of those logistical elements, and makes it very, very easy because Amazon can take care of all of it for you. It can create some complications on the state income tax side and the sales tax side, because when you have products stored in warehouses all over the US and you don't necessarily even know which warehouses, it can create some complexities for sales tax and for state income tax. So we can cover that another time, but just so you keep in mind that it's something that you will need to look into. Another pro of selling on Amazon is that customers trust the name. They know that when they're buying from Amazon, it's super easy to return. They can make complaints without a problem. And because of that, they're a lot less worried when they're going into a sale. Another pro, which also relates to sales tax, is that Amazon is a marketplace. So unlike Shopify, where you need to really understand and set up your sales tax collection correctly and make sure that you're remitting sales tax to the proper state taxing authorities, Amazon takes care of that for you. So they collect sales tax for you. They remit the sales tax for you. You may still need to file in certain states with like either zero returns or just letting them know that you are selling on Amazon, but you won't have to remit the actual payment. So that makes the process much easier for you. And the last pro that we'll cover, even though I'm sure there's a bunch more, is demand capture. Amazon is really excellent at this. They understand that this first second that a customer shows any interest in purchasing a product, they're going to start with personalized product recommendations and, with showing you the ratings of certain products. They're going to do targeted advertising. So it makes it much easier for you to convert your customer if somebody shows even a little bit of interest in buying your product. Now we're going to cover the cons. Now, the first con I would say is increased competition. With Amazon, as we said, there's a very low barrier to entry. It's very easy to set up a store. It's very easy to deal with FBA when it comes to Amazon. And because of the low barrier to entry, it makes it that there's a lot more competition in Amazon. And because there's a lot of competition in Amazon, and because of the fact that they kind of take a cookie cutter approach, so it's much harder for you to stand out as a brand, you'll need to find other ways to stand out. And that could mean paying a lot more in order to rank better when it comes to the Amazon searches. So it's not as straightforward as just working on your brand and, creating the ad spend that really works for you in social and targeting the right customers. With Amazon, that part does get a bit more complex. Another con, and it's something that a lot of brands are nervous about, is that selling on Amazon will cannibalize their Shopify sales. Meaning if you have an option of buying from your Shopify store or from buying on Amazon, most people will choose Amazon. Now, that wouldn't necessarily be a problem, except that there's a lot of other cons about using Amazon versus your branded store. You want to be a brand. You work so hard to build your brand, to design your brand. You don't want all of that to now just go to Amazon, not to mention the extra costs and fees that they have there as well, which we'll cover afterwards. So that cannibalizing your Shopify brand is a valid concern when it comes to it, but there are certain ways to mitigate the risk. So one would be to control the prices in Amazon versus your Shopify store to still encourage customers to come to Shopify in order to shop. Another one would be to control the product quantities available on Amazon, because if you have limited quantities available on Amazon, ultimately when people are coming back to buy more, they'll go to your Shopify store. Now, to cover the third con, and this is something that I talk about a lot, is the importance of cash flow, right? Cash flow is super important to your business to make sure that you're getting that money in as fast as possible and that you have it when you need to spend it. And when you're working with Amazon, you usually get deposits every 2 weeks. That means that from the time a customer buys a product from you, even though after you ship it and fulfill the order, you're likely not seeing the cash from that sale until 2 weeks later. As opposed to Shopify, or as opposed to Shopify payment processors like Shop Pay or PayPal or Afterpay, which usually just a couple of days until you see those funds. That's a huge difference. So that's something really to keep in mind. You want to make sure that if you are selling on Amazon, you understand that you're planning your cash flow accordingly, that you might not see those income deposits for at least 14 days. Now, the next con we'll discuss is customer data. When it comes to Shopify, and you work so hard to create your brand, a lot of it is based on your customer personas and knowing your customer and seeing who's coming to your store. Shopify provides an invaluable amount of data to you so you understand who your customer is. You can better target them. You can choose better campaigns. You can find ways in order to bring them back and in order to close more sales with them and to hopefully increase the LTV of the customer, the lifetime value. With Amazon, they see each customer as an Amazon customer, not as a customer of your product. And because of that, they don't give you as much data in terms of who's buying your products. That limits your ability to really work with that and to take that customer data and to better your products, to better your campaigns. There's one huge limitation when your customers are buying on Amazon versus Shopify. Now, the last con I'll go into is the Amazon fees. And yes, I buried the lead. I know that this is obviously the biggest concern of most people who are thinking about selling on Amazon. And I would say the thing about Amazon fees is it's not always that they're so much higher than Shopify. It could be that they are, but it really depends on the product, on the size, and how much it would cost to store it. There's a lot of things that come into play when it comes to figuring out if your fee is going to be more expensive or less expensive than selling on Shopify. But one thing is clear, and that is that Amazon fees are way more complicated. And when you're dealing with such complex fees, there's very little transparency and there's little way for you to really be able to plan around how much those fees will actually cost. I think that's one of the biggest complaints I hear from Amazon sellers is the fact that they have no idea how their fees are structured. And it's legit because it's super complicated. So just to run through some of the general fees, and again, there are so many different types of fees and the way it will show up in your report and the way it will show up in your transactions. But in general, you have your monthly subscription. So for the business subscription, that's about $40 a month, right? Okay, that one's easy. Shopify's got that too. Now you have your selling fees, and your selling fees usually range between 8 to 45%, depending on the product. So there's a huge range there. You have your FBA fees, which also will vary significantly based on the size of the product, the weight of the product, what the product is, even vary based on seasonality. But usually that falls between 20 to 35% of your sales. Next, you have to add your advertising fees, which is about an additional 15% of your revenue. And basically, you're looking at paying over 50% to Shopify of your sales. So once you add your revenue, which is usually about 15%, overall, when you combine all the fees, you're paying about 50% of your revenue to Amazon, which is a huge amount of fees, especially when you don't know exactly how to calculate or what to expect in terms of those fees. As I said, 8 to 45% is a huge range of what your fees could be. 20 to 35% is a huge range of what your fees could be. So it's hard for you to know exactly what to expect. And I think that the complexity is what scares people the most. Now, lastly, when you're selling omnichannel in general, it makes things a lot more complicated. This is where having real-time data is an absolute necessity. You need to have a real handle on what your revenue is from both channels, what your merchant fees are, what your income is, what your refunds are, and your discount fees. All of that is super, super important in order to be able to better manage your business and make better decisions. Finaloop is one of the only integrations to Amazon that brings the data in real time. No 2-week delay. Most other integrations, you'll only be able to see that information every 2 weeks as you get the payouts. With Finaloop, you'll be able to see it the second that you have an order fulfilled. And that makes a huge difference in terms of visibility and in terms of understanding the health of your business and how to make better decisions in order to grow your brand, whether it's on Shopify, on Amazon, on both, or on multiple other sales platforms. If you want to read more about this, I'm going to link the blog in the comments below.